covering more than 70% of our planet. The oceans remain a vast and uncharted world, a realm of mystery where light barely reaches, and where countless secrets still lie hidden. But what if I told you that beneath the crashing waves and the endless blue, there might be more than coral reefs and marine creatures? What if, buried in the silence of the deep, are the sunken ruins of entire civilizations that rose, thrived, and vanished without a trace, from Plato's tale of Atlantis to the submerged pyramids of Yonaguni, to the lost city of Dwarka whispered in Indian epics. Legends across cultures tell us stories of kingdoms swallowed by the sea. Are they only myths meant to warn us, or fragments of a forgotten history, waiting to be uncovered in this journey? We will dive through myth and archaeology, faith and skepticism, fact and possibility. We will descend into the abyss, where human history blurs with mystery, and perhaps, just perhaps, we will glimpse the truth behind the world's most enduring enigma: the civilizations lost beneath the oceans. In the 4th century BC, the great philosopher Plato sat down to write to dialogues. Timaeus and Critias. Inside these texts, he described a land unlike any other, an island kingdom beyond the Pillars of Heracles. Known to us today as the Strait of Gibraltar, this kingdom, Atlantis, was said to be larger than Libya and Asia combined, a naval power that stretched its influence across the known world. Plato tells us Atlantis was a place of great abundance, fertile plains, rich in metals like gold and orichalcum, a mysterious alloy more precious than bronze. Its people were noble at first, virtuous, wise, living in harmony with the gods. At the center of their city lay a grand capital built in concentric rings of land and sea, with temples of shining stone, palaces inlaid with precious metals, and harbors filled with countless ships. But in time, as wealth and pride grew, the Atlanteans became corrupted, greedy, and ambitious for conquest. The gods looked upon this arrogance with anger, and in a single night and a single day of catastrophe, Atlantis was swallowed by the sea, leaving behind nothing but legend for over 2 millennia. These words of Plato have echoed through history, sparking debates, inspiring explorers, and igniting the imagination of countless generations. Where could Atlantis have been? Plato placed it beyond the Pillars of Heracles. Yet scholars and adventurers have searched across the globe, each convinced they have found the answer. One of the most compelling theories lies in the Aegean Sea, on the island of Santorini, known in antiquity as Thera. Here, around 1600 BCE, one of the largest volcanic eruptions in human history tore the island apart. Ash and fire rained down, the sea rushed in, and entire settlements vanished beneath the waves. The ruins of Akrotiri, a Bronze Age city preserved in volcanic ash, show a society of wealth and artistry. Advanced plumbing, multi-story houses, vibrant frescoes. Could this have been Plato's inspiration? Others look to the Atlantic Ocean itself, pointing to the infamous Bermuda Triangle, a stretch of sea where ships and planes have mysteriously disappeared. Some believe the ruins of Atlantis rest at the ocean floor here, hidden by turbulent currents and mythic danger, and still others, more boldly, suggest that Atlantis lies frozen beneath the ice of Antarctica, that long ago, the continent was free of ice, home to a thriving civilization before a sudden shift buried it under kilometers of snow and ice. Each theory has its champions, and each raises more questions than answers. Yet, not everyone believes Atlantis was ever real. Historians remind us, Plato was not writing history but philosophy. His story of Atlantis was a moral allegory, a warning of what happens when human hubris defies divine order. When we look at Santorini, the parallels are striking. A powerful civilization destroyed by nature's fury. But no, where in the ruins do we find proof of Plato's grand concentric city? In the Bermuda Triangle, disappearances are often explained by storms, compass variations, or human error, rather than a sunken empire. And in Antarctica, ice cores and geology reveal no trace of a lost civilization beneath the glaciers. Even Plato's contemporaries doubted the tale. Aristotle himself is said to have remarked that Atlantis was invented and destroyed by him, referring to Plato. But then, why has the legend endured so powerfully? Why does the idea of a lost, advanced civilization resonate so deeply within us? Perhaps because the possibility, however faint, touches on something primal, a fear of nature's wrath, and a hope that the past was richer than we dare imagine. And so, Atlantis remains both everywhere and nowhere. It is a story retold in countless books, films, and documentaries. It has inspired treasure hunters to dive into perilous waters, and scientists to push the boundaries of archaeology and geology. Even today, sonar scans, satellite images, and deep-sea expeditions still spark headlines of Atlantis discovered, only to fade into speculation, whether real or imagined. Atlantis embodies humanity's eternal search for origins. It reminds us of the fragility of civilization, how easily nature can erase even the grandest of achievements, and it keeps alive the tantalizing dream that somewhere out there, beneath the waves, lie the ruins of a forgotten world, waiting for us to find it, or perhaps to never be found at all. In 1986, off the coast of Japan's Yonaguni Island, a local diver named Kihachiro Aratake was searching for hammerhead sharks. But instead of sharks, he found something no one had ever expected. Beneath the rolling waves, at a depth of about 25 meters, lay a massive stone structure. Unlike anything seen before, Aratake swam closer and saw immense platforms, terraces, and stair-like formations. The blocks were so precise, so angular, that they appeared carved almost as if he had stumbled upon a sunken temple. Word spread quickly, and soon geologists, archaeologists, and curious divers from around the world came to see the site. What they found would ignite one of the most heated debates in marine archaeology. The site covers an area roughly the size of 2 football fields, stretching over 150 meters in length. Huge rectangular blocks rise from the seabed, stacked like massive stone platforms. There are steps leading upward, each about a meter high, forming what looks like a grand staircase. Sheer walls tower over divers, with angles so sharp they resemble the work of stonemasons. Some divers describe corridors, terraces, even what looks like a stage or altar. There are ledges that resemble pathways, and flat plains that suggest plazas. Most striking of all is the so-called monument, a colossal stepped, pyramid-like formation, rising nearly 25 meters in height from certain angles. It looks eerily like the remains of a sunken city preserved beneath the waves. Could this really be the ruins of an ancient civilization? Professor Masaaki Kimura, a marine geologist from Japan's University of the Ryukyus, believes so. For decades, he studied the Yonaguni monument, mapping its features and identifying what he claims are carvings, stone roads, even possible inscriptions. Kimura argues that the site is at least 10,000 years old, built during the last ice age, when sea levels were much lower. If true, it would rewrite human history, placing an advanced culture in the Pacific thousands of years before known civilizations like Mesopotamia or Egypt, but many other scientists disagree. Geologists counter that the formations are entirely natural. They point out that sandstone in the region breaks along horizontal and vertical planes, creating flat surfaces, right angles, and even step-like features, all without human intervention to them. The Yonaguni monument is a geological quirk, nothing more than rock shaped by waves, currents, and time, and so the site remains in limbo, suspended between history and geology, between human hands and the slow sculpting of nature. To this day, no consensus exists. Divers who have been there often describe a strange feeling, as if the site holds secrets waiting to be uncovered. Could the monument be part of a larger, sunken city, hidden under centuries of sediment and coral? Or is it simply nature's architecture, tricking the human eye into seeing patterns where none exist? When we compare Yonaguni to other ancient structures on land, like the pyramids of Egypt, the ziggurats of Mesopotamia, or the step pyramids of Central America, the resemblance is undeniable. The step design, the terraces, the symmetry all stir the imagination, and yet no artifacts have been found. No pottery, no tools, no clear signs of human habitation. Without such evidence, the mystery remains unsolved. Perhaps Yonaguni is the ultimate riddle of the deep, a place where science and myth collide, and where the line between natural wonder and ancient civilization grows tantalizingly thin. In the ancient Indian epic, the Mahabharata, lies the tale of a city so radiant, so magnificent, that poets compared it to the heavens themselves. This city was Dwarka, the kingdom of Lord Krishna, a city built of shining palaces adorned with crystal, silver, and gold. It was said to have 900,000 royal palaces, decorated with precious metals, each surrounded by gardens and crystal-clear lakes. Bridges and causeways connected the city, and towering walls protected its people. For centuries, Hindus have believed that Dwarka was more than myth, that it was a real city where gods once walked among mortals. But the story takes a darker turn, according to legend. After Krishna left the world, the ocean rose and swallowed Dwarka in a single cataclysmic event. Temples, palaces, and gardens vanished beneath the waves, leaving only the memory of a kingdom lost to the sea for thousands of years. Dwarka was remembered in scripture, revered in devotion, but dismissed by many scholars as mythology, a tale too fantastical to be true, until modern science began to look beneath the waters of India's western coast. In the early 2000s, the National Institute of Oceanography in India launched an underwater survey in the Gulf of Cambay and off the coast of modern Dwarka. To their astonishment, sonar scans revealed geometric patterns on the seabed, resembling the outlines of streets and foundations. Divers recovered stone blocks, anchors, and structures arranged in straight lines. Far too orderly to be the work of chance, fragments of pottery were dredged up, along with artifacts that some scientists believe belong to a city thousands of years old. Even more shocking, carbon dating of certain pieces suggested an age of up to 9,500 years. If accurate, this would make Dwarka one of the oldest known urban settlements on Earth, predating the Sumerians of Mesopotamia by millennia. But the discoveries remain controversial. Some scientists argue that the supposed city structures are nothing more than natural formations, shaped by ocean currents and geology. Others question the dating methods, suggesting that the artifacts found may have drifted from other sites, and yet the alignment of walls, streets, and right angles beneath the waves continues to intrigue researchers. Could it be that the myths of Dwarka preserved a memory of a real, ancient city, swallowed by the sea at the end of the last ice age? Or are we simply seeing patterns where none exist, projecting legends onto stone and sand? Whatever the truth, Dwarka's mystery has captured the world's imagination, blurring the boundary between faith, history, and archaeology, and reminding us that sometimes the line between myth and reality is thinner than we think. For more than 1,000 years, the ancient Egyptian city of Thonis-Heracleion was known only in faded texts and half-forgotten legends. It was said to be Egypt's great gateway to the Mediterranean, a port of immense wealth, where traders from Greece, Phoenicia, and beyond converged to exchange goods and ideas. But by the 8th century AD, the city had vanished completely, swallowed by the sea. For centuries, historians debated whether it had ever existed at all, or if it was merely a myth like Atlantis in the year 2000. French underwater archaeologist Franck Gaudiot embarked on a mission off the coast of Alexandria using advanced sonar and magnetometers. His team scanned the seabed of Abu Qir Bay, and there, beneath layers of sand and silt, they found something astonishing: the ruins of an entire city, perfectly preserved under the waves. Massive stone blocks, canals, docks, and colossal statues lying face down in the seabed. The legendary city of Thonis-Heracleion was real. Over the next 2 decades, teams uncovered a breathtaking array of artifacts. Giant statues of pharaohs and gods, towering more than 16 feet tall, raised once again into the light of day. A hoard of gold coins and jewelry, intact temple pillars, and even entire shipwrecks, resting where they sank more than a millennium ago. These finds painted a vivid picture of a thriving metropolis, Egypt's true maritime capital before Alexandria rose to power. Yet even a city so mighty could not withstand the forces of nature. Historians believe a combination of earthquakes, unstable clay soil, and rising sea levels caused Thonis-Heracleion to sink suddenly beneath the waves. For over 1,200 years, it lay in silence, until modern science revealed its secrets once more. Unlike Atlantis or Dwarka, this was no legend. Thonis-Heracleion proves that entire cities can vanish beneath the sea only to be rediscovered centuries later, reminding us that myths of lost civilizations may not be myths at all. But unlike Atlantis, Pavlopetri is no legend. It is real, tangible, and mapped in stunning detail beneath the waters of southern Greece. At nearly 5,000 years old, it is the oldest known submerged city on Earth, confirmed by science, a place that once thrived above the waves, now preserved in silence below them. This is not myth, but history carved in stone, waiting patiently for us to rediscover it. back when archaeologists first studied Pavlopetri, they expected scattered fragments, broken walls, meaningless rubble. But what they uncovered was extraordinary. A complete urban layout, frozen in time beneath the waves. Streets running in perfect lines, rectangular courtyards, multi-roomed houses, and even two-story buildings. There were open plazas, a sophisticated drainage system, and tombs that spoke of complex ritual life. This was no small fishing village, it was a thriving Bronze Age city, with trade networks stretching across the Aegean, and thanks to modern technology, researchers have reconstructed Pavlopetri in virtual 3D, walking once again through a city that vanished 5 millennia ago. It is as if the sea itself became an archivist preserving a blueprint of ancient life in remarkable detail. But Pavlopetri's story also carries a warning, for it did not vanish through war or decline, but through the raw power of nature. Geologists believe a deadly combination of earthquakes, shifting land plates, and coastal subsidence pulled the city down beneath the sea. One day, its citizens walked bustling streets. The next, their world was swallowed whole. Pavlopetri reminds us that civilizations, no matter how advanced, stand fragile before the forces of the earth. What we see preserved beneath the water is both a marvel of archaeology and a sobering reminder that the same fate could strike any coastal city today, just as suddenly and just as completely. In Pavlopetri, myth meets reality. It is a city once thought impossible, a reminder that not every legend is fantasy. For beneath the surface of our seas, time hides more than we can imagine. And if Pavlopetri is what we can prove, then what else might still be waiting in the deep? Long before Hollywood's pirates sailed across the silver screen, there was a real pirate haven, rich beyond imagination and infamous beyond belief. It was called Port Royal. Perched on the edge of Jamaica, this bustling city of the 17th century became the beating heart of piracy in the Caribbean. Gold and silver flowed through its taverns. Merchants and raiders struck deals over rum. And lawlessness was not the exception but the rule. To some, Port Royal was a paradise of wealth and freedom. To others, it was the most sinful city on earth, a place where greed, violence, and lust ruled every street corner. But on a summer morning in 1692, judgment came swiftly. At exactly 11:43 a.m., the earth roared, and the ground beneath Port Royal began to liquefy. Entire streets crumbled and slid into the sea, buildings toppled as if made of sand, and a wall of water rose up and swallowed the city whole. In just a few minutes, 2/3 of Port Royal was gone, along with thousands of lives and countless treasures. One haunting discovery tells the story better than any record. A pocket watch, recovered centuries later from the ruins. Its hands forever frozen at the exact moment the disaster struck, 1143. The second the city of sin was erased from the surface of the earth. What made Port Royal's fall so devastating also made it unique because the city was swallowed so quickly. Much of it was preserved beneath the sea like a time capsule. Archaeologists who explored its sunken ruins called it the Pompeii of the New World. Beneath the waves, they found bottles of rum still sealed, clay pipes with tobacco residue, coins scattered on cobblestones, even sunken ships resting exactly where they went down. Every object told a story, frozen at the very moment of catastrophe. Unlike Atlantis or other legends, Port Royal needs no imagination. It is a real pirate city, preserved beneath the Caribbean, where the echoes of laughter, violence, and greed still seem to linger in the water. Port Royal stands as both legend and lesson, a city that rose on wealth and sign, and fell in the blink of an eye. Its story reminds us that even the most powerful of human havens can be shattered in a moment, and that beneath the oceans lie not only forgotten civilizations, but also frozen warnings waiting for us to uncover them. Up until now, we've explored lost cities, sunken harbors, even pirate havens, but Doggerland was something far greater. It wasn't just a settlement or a kingdom, it was an entire world. A vast stretch of fertile land that once connected Britain to mainland Europe 10,000 years ago. This was a green paradise of rivers, lakes, and forests. Woolly mammoths roamed the plains, hunter-gatherers fished its rivers, and families built homes on the rolling hills that now lie beneath the waves. Doggerland was not myth. It was real, and it was alive for centuries. The secret of Doggerland slept beneath the cold waters of the North Sea, and its rediscovery didn't come from divers or archaeologists. It came from fishermen as their nets dragged the seabed. They began to pull up strange treasures. Stone tools carved by human hands, bones of giant elk and mammoth, even the skull of a Mesolithic hunter. Each artifact was a whisper from a world long drowned, proof that a lost land once lay where today waves crash endlessly. But Doggerland's end was not sudden, not a single day of disaster. It was the slow, relentless rise of the seas after the last ice age. Glaciers melted, oceans crept higher, flooding valleys, swallowing forests, pushing people further and further back. Finally, a massive tsunami, triggered by the Storega slide off the coast of Norway, dealt the final blow, submerging what remained beneath the waves forever. Doggerland vanished, and Britain became an island. Doggerland is more than an ancient memory, it is a warning, because its fate was written by rising seas. The same forces we face today, what happened to Doggerland over millennia, could happen to modern coastal cities in mere centuries. Its story reminds us that nothing built by humanity is safe from the ocean's reach. Atlantis may be a myth, but Doggerland is history and perhaps prophecy. Across history, across myth, across science, one theme echoes again and again. The sea does not only give life, it also takes it back. From Atlantis in the pages of Plato, to Yonaguni's terraces beneath the waves, from Dwarka in the sacred songs of India, to Heracleion, the lost port of Egypt, proven real at last, each story whispers to us of glory and tragedy, of triumph and loss. These sunken cities remind us of something timeless, that human greatness, no matter how vast, rests upon fragile foundations. A single volcanic eruption, an earthquake beneath the waves, or the slow, relentless rise of the sea can erase centuries of achievement in a single night. And what remains of palaces, temples, and markets is only silence beneath the tides. But with every rediscovery, with every statue lifted from the deep, every artifact brushed free of sand, we are reminded that the ocean does not only conceal, it also preserves, it guards fragments of memory, pieces of who we were, and perhaps clues to who we might become. That is why these stories never fade. They fuel our imagination, our science, and our desire to search further still. So we are left with a question: if mighty cities could vanish so completely, if whole civilizations could be lost to the sea, what else lies hidden in the darkness, just beyond the reach of our eyes? And when the waves finally surrender their secrets, will we be ready for what we find? So, what do you think? Are these sunken civilizations echoes of forgotten history, or simply legends dressed as truth? Was Atlantis ever real, or was it only Plato's allegory? A warning to mankind about pride and downfall. I would love to hear your thoughts, your theories, and your imagination. Leave your ideas in the comments below. And let's continue this journey together. Thank you for watching and for sharing your curiosity. Until next time, may the waves of history guide us toward the next great mystery waiting to be discovered.